reality. People on the streets say Sabrina speaks. Tune into the show, she will let you know. Tell all your friends and family. Real talk is no joke. You get the news straight up from grassroots and concerns. You hear some people gone. So tell all your friends to tune in to
Good evening, Cayman. I'm Sabrina Turner, and welcome to Sabrina Speaks, your daily dose of clarity, truth, and community insights. Every weekday from 5 to 6:30 p.m., we're tackling the issues that affect you, from national headlines to grassroots concerns. Whether you're in traffic or winding down your day, this is your chance to hear it straight and speak your truth. So buckle up, Cayman. We're not holding back.
This is the show. We gotta let you know. Now we got to go.
And now here's Sabrina.
Well, hello, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to another episode of Sabrina Speaks, Voices of the Islands, Conversations for the World, and the podcast where voices rise, stories unfold, and inspiration takes center stage. I'm your host, Sabrina, and yes, it is good to be back with you today. Hello, October. Yes, I can't believe this. It is already October 1st. Oh my goodness, look at how the time is flying. But it's good to be back with you. How's your day going? I mean, how is it in your neck of the woods? Are you excited about the season? Where you get all prepared for the festive season? And to all my brave men and women on the front lines, that includes my Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, or fire guys, or people at the prison, the EMS, even even my DEH crew guys, MRCU, all the persons working in healthcare. Yeah. Coast Guards as well, because they're out there on the open waters. Thank you. Thank you for all you do. And thank you for your service. It is indeed a pleasure to be back here with you. The content you're about to hear here this evening, including any discussions or opinions from myself, guests, and or participants, is intended solely for general information and entertainment purposes. It's not a substitute for professional legal, medical, or financial advice, and I encourage you to consult with a qualified professional for specific concerns. Sabrina Speaks disclaims all liability for any decisions or actions taken in reliance on the information presented. Now, yesterday was a very informative discussion. I got some excellent feedback even today and after the show. But you asked for it yesterday, and I told you it was pretty much an easy deliverable for me because it's right up my comfort zone, to be honest, and I'm delivering. The title of today's podcast is Unpaid Promises: Immigration's Fees, Political Will, and Cayman's Reputation. You're hearing that PR holders are not paying their annual fees, and as such, millions are being lost, and what appears to be laws and conditions are often ignored. We were also promised immigration reform. Where is it now? Yeah, my aim is to break it down. My aim right here today is to break it down with each and every one of you. Don't forget to follow, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And you can follow me on Facebook. Look for Sabrina Turner. Then you're going to see Community Activists. Click it. Follow. I'm also on YouTube and on Instagram at Sabrina Speaks and the number 12. And of course, you can find me on all of the CMRTV.com and CMR Instagram and Facebook and YouTube channels as well. But 345-936-8255 is the number to call and join in on this conversation because your voice matters. I expect your feedback. I like getting your feedback. But stay with me for another very informative thought-provoking discussion right here on Sabrina Speaks. I'll be right back. I promise. I'll be right back after this message.
The Ministry of Youth, Sports, Culture and Heritage is pleased to announce that the nominations for the 2026 National Recognition Awards are now open. Nominate individuals and groups who played a key role in developing the Cayman Islands' physical infrastructure. The categories include landmark leaders, infrastructure innovators, and the builders of Cayman. Visit gov.ky/YSCH. Click on the nominate button to make a nomination. Here is a step-by-step guide to fill out the form. Before starting, please read the instructions, the award categories, and the eligibility criteria. Step 1. Enter your personal information and select the award category for the person or group you are nominating. Click Yes to confirm that your nominee meets the criteria. Step 2. Enter the nominee's full name, date of birth, and district. Indicate their current status, whether living or deceased, and ensure you have the current contact information for your nominee and their next of kin. Fill out the submission detail and provide any supporting documents and a reference to support your nomination. Step 3. Review your submission and make any changes by clicking the previous button. When you are ready, confirm and agree to the terms and click Submit Form to make your nomination. A thank you notice will confirm that the nomination was received, and a copy of the application will be sent to your email. Your nomination will be reviewed and considered by the National Recognition Awards Committee, and only successful nominees will be contacted and recognized at next year's National Heroes Day ceremony. The deadline to make a nomination is October 15. Remember, you can submit multiple nominations or browse our frequently asked questions by visiting the National Recognition Awards tab at gov.ky/YSCH. We look forward to receiving your nomination.
And what do you know? Welcome back. Welcome back to this, another episode of Sabrina Speaks. And for those of you just joining me, I see ya. Our title is Unpaid Promises, Immigration Fees, and Political Will, including our very own reputation. PR holders are not paying their annual fees. And as I said before that break, millions are lost and laws are ignored. You asked for it yesterday, and here I am going to do my best to deliver. Now, WORC and more immigration reform was promised in 2025, and people are still asking, where is it? I mean, they're going to the parliament. What are we hearing? My aim this evening is to break it down to you as best as I can, citing the laws, breaking it down pretty much similar to what I did yesterday, looking at immigration law and enforcement gaps and budget transparencies and loss of revenue when these things are outright ignored. Political will versus silence as well. And, dignity, fairness, and Cayman's reputation. That's pretty much what we're going to be delving in today. And I'm hoping that in this space, with your feedback as well, in me preparing for today, I noticed some very interesting language being used with certain types of applications where substantial, just an example, under the regulations where it says like for a substantial business presence where you have to, and I'll go into the numbers, don't quote me right now, where you have to set up a business. Once you can provide a lease if you're going to open up a business, that you can provide evidence that you're employing at least 4 persons in a 9-month period. What was interesting when I read that, right? It didn't say Caymanians. It said persons that are legal and ordinarily residents. But if that sparked your interest, if you think more, I will break down, even for those of you who are saying, revoke these statuses, revoke these PRs for non-payment. I'm going to break it down of how the board considers an application, when these conditions are actually given on these approvals. What does that mean? And you're thinking, we got to make a decision. Is it just outright revocation? Do we consider using discretion, but I'm going to get down into it. So yeah, let's see who's commenting. I'm seeing you building and taking your time coming in. Shaka Zulu, good evening to you. It's a pleasure to see you here. One of these days, I really need to know who Shaka Zulu is because I know that now you. I need to know who that Shaka Zulu is. Hi, Connie. How are you, my dear? Yes, and you're saying good evening to everyone. Well, early this evening, you bet. But you didn't beat Shaka Zulu. What a mess. And Jimbo, he's MIA, so I'm assuming he's having a heck of a time. Kudos to him. Good for him. Every now and again, he'll pop up and he'll comment, but he is definitely missed. You guys, all of you are appreciated. And when one don't comment, Marshall soon pops in and yeah, look, Damian Henry's here. Yes. And Shanisha Anderson, beautiful evening to you, my dear. Damian Henry is locked in. It's good to have you all here. And it's Iva. See, I swear I called your name and you just popped up. So there we go. That's the power of this space, but it's good to be here. Honestly, it's good to be here with you this evening. And I'm hoping that you're really, really taking away some serious information that I'm sharing here with you. It is not easy being able to deliver this almost like in a classroom style, but breaking it down in layman's terms and actually speaking law so that I can put it into perspective based on your concerns and your complaints and what you're voicing. And it was, like I said yesterday when somebody mentioned it, Sabrina, you need to do a show on persons who don't pay PR fees. If we had wanted to do a 2-hour show, an additional hour and a half, 2 hours, I could have last night on this, like on the fly. But I thought it was only fair to just have, there was a lot to digest last night. I get it. I understand it. And hence, I felt that today was warranted this, because when you open up immigration in its entirety, and how fitting, because we're hearing about immigration reform, we're hearing what people are talking about and what's being proposed, extending to 22 years, and just breaking it down for you. Having a standalone show on this topic, even though you're interested in what happens when people don't pay PR fees, what are the consequences, what are the laws surrounding even status, how the boards are now that we mentioned about boards, I'll share something with you after we do some birthday shout outs. You know, there is the status and permanent residency board, there's a business staffing plan board, there's a work permit board. Got some intel on that for you. So you got to stick with us. Tell your friends, call them, tell them to log on because we're live. But I need you guys to participate. 936-8255. Let's send huge birthday shout outs to Zarina. Hi, happy birthday, my love. You're celebrating your birthday today. Your mom, Stephanie, you might have seen me showed Stephanie McCoon, my cousin from the Brat, her birthday. This is her daughter, Zarina. She entered a Miss Cayman pageant not many moons ago, not that long. Oh God, I'm doing you bad. But yeah, I'm so happy for you. Congratulations. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. And you're making your mom proud. And I'm hoping that you're enjoying your birthday. Big shout outs to you. And guess who also? Big. Yes. Happy birthday to the Honorable Mia Motley. She's the 8th Prime Minister. We know we got a lot of people from Barbados here, as they call from BIM. She's the 8th Prime Minister of Barbados since 2018, and she's the leader of the BLP, that's the Barbados Labour Party, since 2008. She's also celebrating a birthday with Zarina, but happy birthday to everybody who's celebrating a birthday today and whom I may have missed. But yeah, so all of that, lots of celebrations going on, kicking into the festive season. But let's bring it back to home because, I like to pick certain headlines that may spark some questions. And shortly before going live, we had seen where there was, what do we got here? We got some information in regards to the blue iguana habitat interim directive lifted for East End properties. And that's a story that you can also find in great detail. That's the image that goes along with it. Quite interesting image. Ugh. But yeah, so you may say, well, Sabrina, what the heck does that mean? That headline pretty much means that the Cayman Islands cabinet decided to cancel a temporary policy that had labeled certain pieces of land in East End as important habitat for blue iguanas. And the cabinet's decision came after landowners who were affected by the policy and asked for it to be removed. So you might wonder, well, what is the role of cabinet in this specific decision? The cabinet pretty much in this specific case, and I'm encouraging you to go on and read this in other headlines as well, but I thought this was important understanding, the NCA that has been very topical, wanting to change this, and how, recommendations from the National Conservation and DOE is not being considered. But in this specific story or this case, the cabinet in this case acted as a final decision maker here for this case after hearing concerns from, as I said, landowners, they chose to cancel a temporary policy for that had protected certain East End lands from blue iguanas, because that was blue iguanas habitat. And this decision highlights how our government balances, it shows a delicate balance in conservation goals with community voices, and how cabinet decisions can directly shape land use and environmental priorities. So, these are some of the questions. And what does this mean? What does this mean for our landowners? Just bear with me, caller, please. The implications for the landowners now is that they may have fewer restrictions because of this lift, and they are now able to develop their property. And the removal of this habitat designation could also mean that it's easier for these landowners approval for construction and land modification. It also means that there's fewer environmental assessments or permits that will be required. And it also means that greater freedom to sell, lease, or subdivide this land. And, some of the owners may have felt that they were shackled or limited by the interim directive that was there before it was removed. And this cancellation would pretty much alleviate legal uncertainty about the activities that they're allowed to do, with clearing away certain foliage and potential delays or costs for conservation compliance. So this is really what it means. But I encourage you to just go on and read the story in depth. But that's me pretty much breaking it down in layman's terms. And at the end of the day, it is what it is. This is a decision that opens the door for more freedom, but also more responsibility, with fewer restrictions that can, pursue development or the land use, or, are made changes more easily. And, but it's because of, also raises the question, who now protects the blue iguana here? So that's another question that one may ask. I'm seeing comments will come in again as this story becomes, and this cabinet's decision be more out in the public. Who now protects the blue iguanas? As Caymanians, we must ask whether lifting this directive helps or hurts the long-term environmental goals, and how can we support both the property rights and the species survival. But again, there's a direct quote from the Honorable Premier in this article that says it was a delicate balance, and they're hoping that this decision, will set well and everybody will be happy. Now, is it precedent setting for future situations? Who knows? Good evening, caller. You're live on Sabrina Speaks.
Evening. I think you're forgetting a big important birthday today. Your big friend, Jean Panton, wife Jean birthday.
OMG, that one missed me. My God.
And to your big friend.
Yep. No, but that was definitely an oversight, to be honest. My humble apologies there. Happy birthday, Miss Jean. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you so much for that gentle reminder, my sweet.
All right. Okay.
All righty. Thank you. No, thank you. No. Thank you. That was definitely an oversight. Just keeping up with all the latest. And as I said, some of these things pop up on your screen. I try to share them as I get them, but thank you for that. Happy birthday, Jean. I hope that you're enjoying a nice, restful day and they're not overworking you. Yes, let's see who joined me after. Iva, blessed good evening. And Marshall, good evening to you as well. We're just going to look at you hear me guys talk about overseas. This is another one that's making regional news, that CARICOM, where freedom of movement, even though we're not a full member state, the future of regional travel is here, and it starts today. OMG. CARICOM is definitely aligning themselves. They're galvanizing as independent small island development states. And starting today, October 1st, citizens from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Belize, Barbados, and Dominica can experience full free movement across these 4 CARICOM member states. Now, if you look at what this means possible new jobs, new adventures, and no work or residency permits to slow you down or to slow those persons down. And, maybe it's time for these other jurisdictions to explore what it would look like to live or work across other Caribbean jurisdictions with this unprecedented freedom opportunity, as they call it, and integration. So very interesting. And they're looking at even talks about fire services and their uniform service, frontline staff again. So the opportunities here are endless. And emergency and primary health care, they can access within these other jurisdictions, and public primary and secondary education, and equal treatment. Benefits apply equally to all nations from the 4 member states. Now that's 4 states, heads, leaders coming together and saying what's in the best interest of the people. This can work for us. Unlike some countries right now that is in a lockdown, we got to give thanks to God that in our last finance committee meeting, that everything was okay. Do you realize if there wasn't a compromise, bipartisan agreement with that, even though questions were asked, that the Cayman Islands could have possibly been in a lockdown right now, where key personnel right now are not being paid in the United States. You can see it. For whatever reasons, there is a bigger plan, as the President of the United States is saying. And thank God we are that mature that we can do the business of the day here. I don't even want to think that we would ever reach that point where we can't approve a budget and it pretty much locks down the Cayman Islands, where access to healthcare, payment of overseas providers, something that could even impact air evacuation. So that's not, I hope we would never get there, ever, where we are in a deadlock where you just can't get over personalities and egos, because it's pretty much just a conversation, the difference of getting the numbers between the Democrats and the Republicans, of speaking to 7 members from the other side to just engage. And you're hearing it from both sides. I'm not getting into US politics. I'm not going there. But the elephant in the room is, what impact is it having on the daily lives of those men and women who are serving all over the world, all civil servants right now in the United States, and the country needs to keep running. So we still got to give God thanks for everything that we do here. And we have so much to be thankful for, to be honest. We have to say, thank God we live where we live. And just before going into our topic, this is the entire month. Pink is going to be the color, because it is that, cancer awareness month, breast cancer awareness month, and we'll be having some guests on at periods of times over this month. And just remember what this month also signifies. Huge, lots of activities going on. Today kicks that off as well. But I thought this was so cute. In October, we wear pink, even though I'm not wearing pink today. But I thought it was so cute, and just as a gentle reminder to you. So yes, it's good to have all of you here with me this evening, and you asked for this topic. And today I am going to deliver and discuss a topic that is pretty much quietly draining our national resources, some may say, and testing the integrity of our immigration system. And that is unpaid permanent residency fees. Yesterday, it came up. It was loud. And it has been a question that was asked, pretty much immigration overall, that people have been asking for this topic. So you'll get a little bit more if you all participate. If I see your questions on here, I'm willing to go there with you this evening to answer your questions or concerns. Now, not specific cases, for God's sakes. No, we're not going there. I'm just going to break down the law. But this isn't just about delinquency, to be honest. It's about our very own dignity, and it's about enforcement. You're going to hear that over and over again today. And it's also a little bit of political will and diluting egos and being cautious, being measured with your words. And the importance of inclusion, public awareness, and public education. Now, you know, back in 2025, on the elections that we had just earlier this year, pretty much every candidate, including myself, and every party called for immigration reform. And you, the Cayman Islands, have given a mandate to the sitting administration, and you demanded it. And yet, here we are right now. And so you asked, if PR holders aren't paying their dues, what's going to happen? Like, who's really footing the bill for Cayman public services then, if they don't pay their bills? And are we subsidizing silence and delinquency with taxpayer and dollars? Let me break it down and just come straight. When persons are granted permanent residency, let's say you're granted permanent residence for being here under the point system, you are granted that based on the amount of points you've acquired. When it's approved, it comes with a slew of conditions. Those conditions actually mean that if you break any of those conditions, that your residence with, in this case, the right to work, we're going to do it the 8-year with the right to work, that can be revoked by the board, by the Caymanian Status and Permanent Residency Board, okay? And we're talking about the board currently acting in accordance with the 2021 revision. And when you look at that piece of legislation, that Immigration Transaction Act, and you look at the composition then of the boards, I can go through that for you to make it make sense, what they consider and the powers of the board. But just before coming live, there are already delays, there are already backlogs with all of these boards. Everyone who has filed an application, waiting for an application, some are waiting for a year, some waiting 2 years, maybe even a little bit longer. My sources tell me that every one of those boards right now, their term expired last night, 12 o'clock. So as of 12:01 today, there is not one status and permanent residency board member that has an appointment. Neither does a work permit board, neither does the business staffing plan board. There could be others. And right now, as of October 1st, there are no board meetings until further notice. They're all on pause because the cabinet has to go through and they have to appoint board members. And usually this is an exercise, supports and agrees with the minister for their appointments. And with these boards having a number of positions, a chair and a deputy chair and all that sort of stuff on them, you get representation, or you try as much to get representation from as much districts as possible to serve, so you can have fair and balance on representations on these boards, so that no one feels disenfranchised, you know, and that is where they are now. What happened? Why it's not done, or why they haven't gotten there yet, I don't know. But right now, all of the instruments that were appointed to the current boards, nobody can pretty much go because they expired yesterday. So until further notice, there will be no board meetings, from what I have been told, because at the end of the day, they don't have any members. Yeah. So you have normally a chair. The Caymanian Status and Permanent Residency Board shall consist of the following persons appointed by holding office at the pleasure of the cabinet. And here was it. Section 3 of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision says the Caymanian Status and Permanent Residency Board shall consist of the following persons appointed by and holding office at the pleasure of Cabinet, save for those persons referred to in E to G, which more than likely they're representatives from the ministry, who shall be public officers and shall hold office by virtue of their public service appointment. And these are the positions: a chairperson, a deputy chairperson, 12 members selected from among persons legally and ordinarily resident in the islands. That's subsection C. There is nowhere on this that says you have to be generational Caymanian. There is no way on here that it says you have to be status holder. It says as long as you're legal and ordinarily resident in the islands, you can serve 12 members. I digressed. Let me continue. The director of work or the director's designate, the head of the work permits, Caymanian status and permanent residence, or the director's designate. F, a secretary and an assistant secretary. That's the composition of your status and permanent residency board. There is no way where in this current legislation that it says you have to be Caymanian, generational, however you want to label it. The composition of this says that 12 members selected from among persons legal and ordinarily resident in the islands. Okay? That makes up your board. Hello, Miss Valerie. And I had to say that for context. Okay? Now it goes on to say about the same thing with the Business Staffing Plan Board. A chairperson, a deputy chairperson, 6 representatives from the business community appointed so as to ensure a board representation of the various industries in the islands. Not more than 3 other persons legally and ordinarily resident in the islands. Again, let me point out, it na say you gotta be Caymanian, be it generational or not. The director, deputy, or other designate, the chief education officer or the chief education officer's designate, the director of WORC or the director's designate, the head of the work permits, Caymanian Status and Permanent Residency Board, or a director's designate, a secretary and an assistant secretary. Now there we go again. Subject to this act, the members of the board referred to in subsection 2BH, subsection 3B to G, and subsection 4E. I know this is hard, but I just want you to get an idea. These powers and privileges and responsibilities are the members of the board and shall not have the right to vote. So these are all of your directors of immigration and stuff because they're civil servant. So the ones who have the right to vote to make a say on the Business Staffing Plan Board, likewise on the Status and Permanent Residency Board, are those, in this case for the BSP, 6 representatives from the business community. And like I said, for Status and Permanent Residence, 12, okay? That is a little bit more broad. And then you also have, at the end of the day, all of the other ones, officers of WORC, and you got the director of work and what their powers are, and so forth, okay? Now, when you look then at even the BRAC, Cayman BRAC and Little Cayman also has an independent board, okay? There continues to be established a board called the Cayman BRAC and Little Cayman Immigration Board, which consists of a chairperson, a deputy chairperson, and 3 other members appointed by cabinet. So 3 other members are appointed by cabinet. The members of the Cayman BRAC and Little Cayman Board shall be appointed by and hold office at the pleasure of cabinet. So all of these things has to be decided upon in cabinet. Final say are your 8 cabinet ministers But of course, it comes to caucus. So even those who are not holding ministerial seats in the government, opposition do have no say here sometimes, but it's predominantly based on caucus, okay? But the cabinet may appoint committee members of the Cayman Brac and Little Cayman Immigration Board and may delegate at any such committee such functions of the board as it considers necessary. The cabinet may appoint a secretary to a committee, appoint under subsection 3, and as such secretary shall have the right to vote. So in that case, that's the difference in the dynamics there. So when you look at all of these, and when you look at their functions, their responsibilities, and you're breaking down the meetings and all of that, they even go about the duty of confidentiality and the facts, particular relating to any matters based on these applications, that confidentiality is key for all of those members. You cannot be going out there making curry saying, I'm sitting as a board member on this board. Yeah, man, put it in and don't worry, I'll give you my vote. Or better yet, for favor, you don't sell anything. It is what it is. It is what it is. You don't do that. You don't do that. It is a noble call or ask to be represented here on these boards because you are the gatekeepers of this piece of legislation. You are the gatekeepers, okay? And those members of the boards who are not public officers, which means if you're not a government employee like the ex officio members, they shall receive remuneration in respect of each meeting attended, and the chairperson, deputy chairperson shall receive additional remuneration as may be determined from time to time by cabinet. So cabinet pretty much sets what each board member or what board gets, and that's in agreement. I know right now the civil service is in the middle of an exercise where they're making sure that it's fair and balanced, because we saw where some boards, we're not talking about statutory authorities, that's separate. We're seeing where some boards are not compensated, because back in the day, it was an honor to just give back of service into your community. But we're seeing now, based on the demand and how much long hours these persons actually have to be here, that it's taking a long time. I mean, some of these agendas can have 200-300 applications. You have to actually process, and you have to know the law, and to make sure that you're not in breach or you're not making decisions off the fly or based on personalities. There are considerations for how applications are being processed. And these are quite interesting, because this will all make sense to you when I go into all of what is being broken down here. You asked for it. So pretty much when a application is approved, they're approved with conditions. And as it pertains to permanent residents with the right to work, if you are a property owner, it comes with a condition saying this application has been approved subject to you continuing to own property of the same or greater value. That's when your application was considered. And then you have the right to work, and it will specify an occupation or occupations, because some right to work can have multiple occupations. So let's say you are a carpenter by day, bookkeeper over the weekend, and by chance you had those two positions always on your work permit. I use those two job titles just for context. We know that, let's say a carpenter's work permit is $2,100 a year, and the bookkeeper's is $4,600 a year. Even though you have the right to work in both positions, your employer would then pay the higher of the two fees, not two fees, okay? So once that fee, which usually becomes due on the anniversary from which the permanent resident application was approved, that's when you make your payments every year, okay? The date in which your payments are due normally coincides with the day in which your permanent residency was granted. Okay. And I'm speaking specifically to persons who have been here legal and ordinarily resident for at least 8 years, and they are subjected to the point system. Now, when they apply to the board for this, the board takes into consideration a number of factors: their education, whether or not they own property, how much money they have in the bank, how much, if they're married or not, whether or not they have accompanying dependents. And that these are all of the things, plus you have to do a history and culture test, right? But the big takeaway is, after it is approved, who is really making sure that they're in compliance with the approval? That responsibility, my dear friends, rests on the shoulders of two persons: the holder of that approval and the gatekeepers. PR holders must pay an annual fee every anniversary, as I stated. So let's say you were a bookkeeper. That fee, after permanent residency is approved, is $4,600. Every 1st of October, you pay $4,600 and you're allowed to continue to work only in that occupation. The difference between being approved on a permanent residence versus being approved on a work permit is that when you're granted permanent residence with the right to work as a bookkeeper, for the purpose of this explanation, you are free to work with any employer you so desire, but only in that occupation, only in that specific job title as outlined on your approval letter. Okay? Now, failure to maintain that payment on your anniversary status, WORC has baked in a 90-day grace period. And after that ceases, they then have the right, if somebody is looking for all of these delinquents, which from what I'm seeing now, they could probably need a total different department. If after that has ceases, WORC refers these delinquents to the Caymanian Status and Permanent Residency Board, which is in this case the authority to revoke the PR status. But at the end of the day, they're also entitled, the holder is entitled to an appeal. Now, some stats that I got just from 2021, there were approximately 41 PR grants that were revoked, but there were over 6,000 at that time PR holders. This goes back to date of 2021. I'm still working on some background information to see how much has been granted since then. Okay. But then you wonder how much may have slipped through the cracks. And then the question should be asked, should revocation then be automatic? But what is in the legislation is that there really is a process before it comes down to revocation. Because the board then, upon being notified that this person is delinquent for whatever reason, they then, by the board, sends a mindful to revoke letter for non-payment. They give them the notice that they haven't paid. And then after that, there are sometimes agreed based on the reason, they could enter into where they're making a payment plan. But many a times what has happened is that enforcement is so slow in actually nabbing these people. What are the consequences? And this is where I feel your question was born. Who's responsible? If they're not paying 1 year, how can they pay 4? How can they pay 5? And the consequences. Well, the consequences is you're up for mindful to revoke. And because of the slow enforcement nabbing, that's often delayed. Then what if the PR person is facing serious hardship? Do you know that based on the law, some of the grounds for revocations in some of these things is quite broad? but there is still a process in which persons given a payment plan, then they actually have the right then to exercise a right of appeal if they just fall afoul of the payment plan. And then even after that, they're entitled to judicial review. You kind of want to ask, how long is a piece of string when it comes to this? But then it boils down, what if somebody fell ill? Should there be some discretionary measures built into that? Now, the law actually allows for revocation, but the system also seems to allow for avoidance and delay. And this is why you're asking for answers, because you're asking to be clear and you're asking for consistency. And what I'm getting, you're asking for non-selective enforcement, being displayed. So at the end of the day, what is really happening? What is really happening? And you are concerned, and I know that people are saying, but we could do so much with this money. Why, if I have to pay my responsibilities, I don't get a bly when it comes to any fees that I owe to government, why should we be giving them a bly? It's mixed, but I'd like to get your feedback on this. Honestly, I would love to get your feedback where you would like to see this going, because you have heard the compositions of the board. You have heard what is actually in the law, and I'm reading it here on the screen, so bear with me if I'm veering off. But when you look at all of these, for even the loss of employment rights certificate under Section 40, the holder of residence and employment rights certificate, for example, let's look at this one, for the spouse of a civil partner, spouse of a Caymanian, or who has obtained a residence and employment rights as a result of their marriage, because this is another big one. The civil partnership with the holder of residence and employment rights certificate and any other provisions shall forfeit his or her rights under this certificate. Now, this is spouse of Caymanians, so I'll get down to the 8-year. If the holder fails within the provisions of Section 51, which I will go down to that. B, the holder's spouse or civil partner ceases to be a Caymanian or be a residence and employment rights certificate holder. Within 10 years of the marriage, or the civil partnership, the marriage or civil partnership dissolved or annulled, the holder ceases to be legal and ordinarily resident in the islands, or the holder of his or her spouse or civil partner have been living apart under a decree from a competent court, or under a deed of separation, or in circumstances where, in the opinion, the board or director of WORC, the marriage or civil partnership has irretrievably broken down. Now, a person who forfeits their rights under this section, who is the spouse or of a civil partner and is the parent of a Caymanian child, may apply to the board or the director of the board for the continuation of the residence and employment rights certificate. And you notice where some people are saying this is where the anchor babies are coming in, because it's in the law. They have a right to actually apply for it to be continued. And in that case, the board can consider whether or not they are actually contributing to the child, they're a part of the child's life, and that sort of stuff. So these are all the conditions for under that area. But when you look then at the general provisions of some of the other areas in which persons can lose, there's a lot of law here. So I'm just trying to get to it as quickly as I can. Where it comes to the general provisions relating to loss of permanent residence, this is, I found, rather interesting. Okay. Here we go. The board or director of WORC may, in respect of any person who has been granted permission to reside permanently in the islands, revoke such permission where A, the person engages in subversive political activity, or organizes, cause, or promises or promotes racism within the islands or elsewhere. When I read A, which story comes back to mind? If you know where I'm going with this, please mention it or give me a call, 936-8255. General provisions relating to loss of permanent residence. A person organizes or engages in subversive political activity or organizes, cause, or promotes racism within the islands or elsewhere. The board or director of WORC is satisfied that the information given in the person's application for permission to remain permanently in the islands was false in a material, particular, or concealed or material fact, meaning if they provided false information, be it directly or indirectly. C, the person who has been convicted of an offense against the laws of the Cayman Islands. D, the person has been convicted of an offense under the laws of another country, the nature of which offense would be, in the opinion of the board or the director of WORC, make that person's continued presence in the islands contrary to the public's interest. Okay. E, if the person becomes destitute. This is for permanent residents. Okay. If the person becomes mentally disordered or mentally defective, as defined in the Mental Health Act 2022 revision, if the person is medically certified to be suffering from a communicable disease that makes that person's continued presence in the islands dangerous to the community. I'm still on permanent residence, by the way. The person is reasonably believed to be a prostitute and to have come to the islands for the purpose of prostitution, or to be living on or receiving the proceeds of prostitution. 2, the person fails to maintain the level of financial investment stated in that person's application for permission to remain permanently in the islands. The person fails to make the annual declaration in respect of themselves, that persons, dependents, and other prescribed matters are required by Section 3712. The person is or has been working in an occupation not specified in that person's certificate, meaning if you got the right to work as a carpenter and you choose to work as a bookkeeper, it can be revoked for that. Either the board or the director of work is of the opinion that the person is no longer supporting or able to support a dependent previously included in the grant of permanent residence. If the person is delinquent for a period of more than 90 days with respect to the payment of prescribed fees relating to the right to reside permanently in the islands. So that's what you're asking. What happens? It can be revoked. But again, they gave this 90-day grace period. It's there. But there is a process. And then they have a right of appeal. And they can stay here while this is being appealed and work like nothing. So this is where the fair and balance comes into play. The person is deemed by cabinet to be undesirable inhabitant of the islands, or the person has been ordinarily resident outside the islands continuously for a period of 1 year or more. How much people gone and just paying their fees? Who is double checking this stuff? Who's looking at it? If they're not away for the saved by education or medical reasons, which has to be supported, the person has been ordinarily resident outside of the islands continuously for a period of 1 year or more. That's grounds for revocation. Okay? The offense referred to in this section 1B must be an offense that would recognize as an offense in the island, and where the substantive holder, meaning the primary holder of the permanent residence, loses that person's right to permanently reside under this law, a person who had acquired permanent residence and employment rights certificate by virtue of the person being a dependent of the holder shall be allowed to make representation to the board or director of work on the person's own behalf as to why the person should not lose that person's right to permanent residence, and the board in its discretion or the director of work in the discretion of the director of work shall determine that matter. Now, I know a lot of you may say, oh, dear Jesus, what is she saying? There's so much, this is so convoluted. But there are provisions in the law that says it can be taken away. It can be revoked. But then there is a process. So at the end of the day, right? When you heard, or when they were actually protesting in regards to the person who had the dive place, the board just couldn't take it away for that. You would have to prove outright that that person was engaged in racism here and in another country. And at the end of the day, this is what immigration reform should be looked at. You hear me said the composition of these boards. Not one of them says that you have to be Caymanian. You could have a board that not one generational Caymanian could be the chairman or deputy chair. It says it right there in the law. So what happens when these fees are not paid? Let's pretty much delve into the dollars and cents. Let's talk about the immigration fees. Okay? From the work permits being delayed, sometimes they give you a grace period as well, to the PR. And there are also other major revenue streams. But let me go back to one particular section here, a substantive business presence that I alluded to. Direct investment. I wanted to make sure that I get here for you. There was one with a substantive business presence where it says that someone can come here and they can open up a business, and then they employ 4 persons out of a calendar year for at least 9 months. But it didn't say that those 4 persons had to be Caymanian. There's nowhere in here that says if somebody wants to open a business, come here. Here it is. Resident certificate, substantive business presence. It didn't say that you had to employ Caymanians. Nope. It didn't say anything of the sort. It says that you pretty much employ 4 persons who are legal and ordinarily resident for 9 months out of a year. There is nothing here that demands under the current act that you have to employ Caymanians under this. There's nothing. Absolutely nothing. Which is why it's important that you look at the words. Because what is being said and what is in current law right now is 2 different things. This is by no means getting after anyone. I'm just actually speaking the truth. There is absolutely nothing here that says one has to actually employ. Here it is in the regulations. Establishment of a substantial business presence in the islands. In considering whether an applicant under Section 50 has established or will establish a substantial business presence in the islands, the director of WORC shall take into account whether through the purchase or lease of commercial real estate, the business has established a physical presence in the islands, and whether the business in question employs or will employ a minimum of 4 full-time employees who are legal and ordinarily resident in the islands for a minimum of 9 months in a calendar year. That's all that says. That's all that says. And for this particular section, it is for people who are in the fund for approved categories pursuant to Section 50. The following are approved categories of business under the substantial business presence: fund administration, brokerage services, investment and fund management services, investment banking, financial trading, including foreign exchange, securities and derivatives, captive insurance or reinsurance management services, reinsurance underwriting. You got insurance claims management, family office, hedge funds incubation, any business operating from within Cayman Brac, providing human resources, accounting, administrative, IT, or other back office support to businesses in Cayman Brac and elsewhere. M, any company registered as an exempt company under Section 164 of the Companies Act. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our regulations. There is absolutely nothing being said here that anyone wanting to do business in the Cayman Islands have to employ Caymanians. You only need to be legal and ordinarily resident. And until this is passed and approved in Parliament, we are open for business and they don't have to employ one Caymanian. And even if the work permits come in and the board refuses because the skill sets or the talents are not here and it's refused, they're entitled to an appeal. Doesn't this make you wonder? Did we put the cart before the horse before we really went and educate ourselves? This line of pack up and go, you're not wanted here? Deal with the law. And are you going to make it that rigid that it has to be? There's nothing wrong with that, you know. I'm not here because I don't want to protect my own. But this is why sometimes people look at us as just noisemakers, because you have laws that's saying otherwise. And this is why it's important for me to come here, as boring as it may be. I have to educate you, because when you open your mouth, I want you to open it based on facts, because I can assure you, those substantial business present individual that is having to invest millions of dollars here to come and bring their families, buy houses in Salt Creek, for example, ain't nothing there that says they have to employ any of us. Let me go to some comments. Aliano, you're here. Nobody's getting blazed up. The work permit being paid for by the employee versus the employer is illegal, right? Then why they're happening? Yeah, enforcement has to uphold that. And the thing is, when these employees, as it pertains to work permits, are coming from a different country, and you have unscrupulous employers who use work permits over their heads because they know in many cases they don't want to go back to their home, they will tell their employees to pay their own work permits and sometimes even trade in business fees. And unless the work permit holders reports it and it's handled fairly and confidential, with a lot of confidentiality to the enforcement section, a lot of these cases are going undetected. And a lot of times, some of the employers who are guilty of this will say, I have people in enforcement. I have friends in immigration. I'll just pick up the phone and you'll be on the next flight. But they're not dealing with looking at it from an enforcement perspective. But the bigger picture here is what I've just read, because you've heard many times on numerous forums, we don't want you to come set up shop and do business here unless you employ Caymanians, but your law is saying something else. When they speak for all of us. How does that make us look? How does that make us feel? When we have a law that's saying something else. There's not one thing in there that says you have to employ a Caymanian. And that's in the regulations. That is in the law. You even see the composition of the boards. There's nothing says that you have to be a Caymanian to serve on any of the boards, by the way, that are not functioning right now because they haven't come up to nobody has been appointed by cabinet. That's a slack law. Who wrote law? No, sir. Tartarian. That was your comment. That's our laws. And Caymanians, as boring as it may sound, I want you to educate yourself. We need immigration reform. But when I tell you it is about fair and balance, and we're giving away Caymanian status, I did a personal exercise this morning, just for context. Follow along with me. Oh. Let's say I have a business, and I'm going to need my calculator at one point. Let's say I have a business and I employed a bookkeeper. The person came to Cayman from day one, working for Sabrina's ABC accounting firm. Whatever. Just dealing with the annual work permit fee, that is $4,600. Follow me. If you got a pen, please take it down. Please write it down. The work permit fee alone for a bookkeeper is $4,600. Okay? We're not talking about how much police records. We're not talking about how much medicals that they go to the local physicians and they get during the course of 9 years. Because remember, this person, for this example, is going to eventually apply for permanent residence. Hold it. But the work permit fee alone, just work with the number 4,600. The work permit fee alone is 4,600. All right? The Caymanian who brought that person, or that Caymanian business that brought that person here to work, is paying $4,600 a year for 9 years. You hear who paying it? The Caymanian company. Because for whatever reason, they can't find somebody. And I know this may be a poor example, but please, for the sake of this, and you want to find out how much the status will ultimately cost, I could tell you how much the status is going to cost. 4,600 times 9 years. Because remember now at year 9, before year 9, they have to apply for PR. When you do that 4,600 times 9 years, that's a total of $41,400 of work permit fee for a bookkeeper. That's going into core government, by the way. Does not include the processing fee. It does not include the bond. It does not include the police record. It does not include the medicals over 9 years. Okay? Then year 9 comes, they get through, they apply for permanent residence. Okay? That's at year 9. Based on their income, let's range it under $80,000. There's a one-time fee for that person to pay, which is $3,750, because remember now they got the permanent residency approved. When the permanent residency is approved, they're allowed to continue in the same occupation they were in for the past 9 years that was paid for by the Caymanian employer. And for the record, the right to work fees, even when they get granted permanent residence, still remains $4,600. Okay? As the law currently stands, they would be subject to be paying every year on the anniversary from which their PR was approved, $4,600 still. Okay, so 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So they pay that for an additional 6 years. That, for the record, is also applicable to be paid by the employer or the holder of the permanent residence. So, because you're so loyal and us Caymanians are so kind-hearted, we're so happy to have you in our business. That's okay. Thank you so much for staying with me. That's the least I can do. I can pay your annual fees for you until you get your status. Then, by then it'll go away. So for an additional 6 years to get them to 15 years, because remember now they got apply for naturalization during this time. And then once they get the naturalization, they will eventually apply for the Caymanian status. But remember, we started off where the Caymanian employer had already paid for the $400, sorry. And then for the additional 6 years to bring them to 15 years, it was an additional $27,600. That, my friends, is a total of $69,000. This does not, again, include police records, medicals, okay? Whether or not that have to be paid during the thing. Okay, hold on. That was 6 years to bring them to 15. But with the reform now, we're going to push the acquisition to get status to 22. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So you add on another 7 years of the same 4,600. That's an additional $32,200. Because we're going to push the acquisition of Caymanian status. Possibly. Because remember now, if they get naturalized, they can apply after 5 years. But we're just doing this so I can tell you exactly how much status will cost this one individual. But the kicker is who got paid 99% of those fees. So when you add the first 9 years, which was for the $1,400, and then the 6 years after the permanent residence of the same $4,600, that was $27,600. And then you add the additional 7 years, because remember, we did not apply for status or you can't qualify for an additional 7 years. That's another $32,200. Ladies and gentlemen, the cost of the Caymanian status then would be $349,600. Those fees will more than likely be paid by that employer, who will more than likely be a Caymanian or a Caymanian-owned business. Because remember, after Caymanian status now is granted, under the current construct, that employee, if they're blessed enough to have a good employer who would have hoped they would have bought their loyalty, would have paid $349,600 in fees. And that person applying then for status pays $1,000 once the status is approved. So technically, the status isn't $1,000. The Caymanian who employed that bookkeeper paid for that status over 22 years for a total of 350,000 Cayman dollars. Take all of that money away. And that was only one individual, never changed employers, never went anywhere, never married, don't have no kids. So the cost of status, okay, would technically be $349,600. That's how much that would be. And who paid it? The law currently says the employer has to pay the work permit fees. And once the worker is with them, as long as they remain loyal, so much, even if you cut this in half, for the first 9 years, your Caymanian company is still paying for the $1,400 in work permit fees. That not include the bond. That not include the filing fee. And then even if you cut the $27,602 because they decide we're going to go half and half, that's still a substantial amount of money. And then you want to extend that then by an additional 6 years? Siobhan, good evening. Thank you for calling. Speak your mind.
Good evening, Sabrina. I'm just listening in here to your math. Yours is better than mine, so I'm going to go with yours. But I want to present a different perspective.
Sure.
And I
Welcome.
hear your concerns, and I hear with everything about fees. But you know me, I'm pro Caymanian.
Of course. And hey, please, for full disclosure, I am pro Caymanian. I have a job to do. I have a job to do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you presenting that side of it. But I mean, given all that you've just said, and this is just, I guess, Angel's advocate, or as my Road husband says, he would like to play the devil. Something.
He's been quiet this evening.
Yeah, don't worry. He's going to soon calling. But I think that this is a time, we've been saying it for eons and eons and really not even doing it. This is a time to engage Caymanians. I mean, we see what the cost of what you've just outlined there could be, the potential cost with the proposal of, with the years to get Caymanian status moving as high as 22 years. Again, this is a time for Caymanians to be upskilling and uptooling themselves. And again, I'm not suggesting that we won't ever rely on foreign labor, but I mean, now is a time when there should be some kind of mandate. They should be mandated to, where qualified hire Caymanians. I mean, that's in legislation. I think that goes without saying. Cayman does not suffer from an absence of laws. My God, we got more than.
Oh, I said that up to yesterday. We short of law.
We suffer from an absence of
enforcement.
And I've volunteered for several departments, the enforcement, but nobody's taken me up on it. But I mean, I just want to bring that perspective there while I hear you outlining the cost of Caymanian status.
I only use that as an example because, but can you imagine if that was your mom and pop business? You're not feeling it immediately, because you're doing it on a year by year increment, and people only see it when that loyal staff of yours gets their status because they have been with you. Then let's say for 15 years. Let's round it off for 15 years. Yeah. But you would have paid close to $50,000 because the law says you have to pay it.
And I hear you. But then again, it puts the onus back on the employer to hire Caymanians. To hire Caymanians. That is the bottom line for me. And again, let me make myself clear. What jobs should be for Caymanians? All of them. All of them. Every single job in this country is capable of being held by a Caymanian. Full stop. And until we actually believe that and actually enforce that, because that's what the law actually says, we're going to be spinning our wheels. We're going to be spinning our wheels. So while I hear you, outlining the costs or whatever, I want employers out there listening to what you just said. Exactly what you just said.
They're not seeing it though. So you can see where I can flip this from either side. I'm just sharing. And I thought, because I did it to a friend today. I said it even here in my home. And I've been saying it for a while, but I deliberately today sat down and I did my own little exercise. And you can see me on my little phone doing it here in real time, because as I kept digging and digging and digging, I'm like, oh my God, who's paying all of this?
and this is not an anti-expat rant for those who think it is.
Yeah.
Will fly a kite. This is just genuinely me asking a question and having another perspective. You've outlined those figures. What is not attractive about trying to train, upskill, retool, whatever needs to happen to hire a Caymanian into that role that you can actually save your company that amount of money? And in some instances, possibly more. I'm not speaking about the exceptional cases where there is no Caymanian.
Yeah, we know that.
Right? But what I'm saying is, we're not talking about astrophysicists, creating stuff to go to NASA or whatever it is they go. I'm genuinely talking about your everyday admin staff, such as bookkeepers.
Well, you heard what I read there in the regulations, that all of those titles that I called out.
No requirement. Requirement.
None.
To hire. Absolutely. But again, we don't suffer from, but I think the law is quite clear in that so far as employment is concerned, the first opportunity must be given to a Caymanian. Particularly
of course. Yeah, but you see, this is where they play with the conditions. And this is where, with a smart and savvy attorney, I'm not an attorney. And I could argue this in appeal. Clickety-spit.
You remember when I said, until we stop having the fox watch the hen house.
Yes. Yeah, you did say
this problem. Okay. When you bring in someone else to create laws for you, they're going to create it from their perspective.
Siobhan,
they already come with their own
the silent majority cannot remain silent anymore. Correct. Because somebody else is going to do it for you.
Consciousness, right? And whether it is willful bias or it is just a conscious, unconscious bias.
Yeah,
I believe that they come with their own. I mean, let me just use this analogy, and I hope I offend anyone. I would say a lot of Asian countries eat a lot of rice. Now, get them to change over to eating yam and banana. It's going to be hard.
Because it's not in them.
They've been exposed to. That's what they've been exposed to, right? So if you're bringing a man from, let me make up my own country, from Northeast Cayman, up in Europe, who's coming here to create legislation, he's creating it from his perspective. What perspective does he have of the Cayman Islands other than from our geopolitical perspective or geopolitical standing? What perspective does he have other than true, when I say factual data as in statistics, population, GDP, all of the factual things that you could Wikipedia if you need to, right? But I mean a true sense of this country, the people in it. Like, should there be protections in place for, forgive me, indigenous Caymanians? Should there be protections in place? I mean, Australia is a continent. They have protections for their indigenous population. I don't see anybody getting up in arms about that. But I'm saying, again, we continue to have the fox watch the hen house, and we wonder why legislation is created in such a way. But the bigger question is, though, these legal draftsperson, and draftsmen, whatever you want to call it, these persons are actually being paid by us.
But they're creatures. Hold on. I've been in these. They do as they're told. And that's where your cabinet comes in.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying, so the example that you just gave there, with respect to that, maybe not specific to the role, but in that,
I just did it because I had the 4 to 600 stuck in my head.
Where it said, no, the part where you were reading where it says no requirement to have for it to be a Caymanian. What I'm saying is, if you, Sabrina, MP, is instructing a legal draftsman to create legislation for, in this case, employment, you don't think it would be crucial and pertinent to say to him, for the avoidance of doubt and to make sure that it is absolutely abundantly not a will, not a maybe, not a but a shall, that it would include the word Cayman?
But you got that is the importance of showing up to work and reading every paper.
But then if you're not doing that, then what are you there for? I'm confused. If you
wouldn't have asked that question if I
MP,
didn't dissect this like this, but this is why it's important that you show up, you read, you challenge, you sit down with your committee, sometimes your most trusted persons, and you read it word for word. The simple or, shall, may are critical. But when you use the term legal and ordinarily resident, and you're going to say you are not welcome here if you want to set up a business and don't hire Caymanians, make that kind of statement when your law says the same thing.
And for those who don't know, I'm not sure if you clarify yet, legal and ordinarily resident means you live in Cayman. Just put that out there. You live in Cayman. It don't mean
I'm
nothing
actually
more
going to the
than you live in
definition.
Cayman.
Yes, ma'am. Legal and ordinary resident means a person's uninterrupted voluntary presence in the islands for a period of time without legal impediment other than a tourist, visitor, or a transit person, during which period the islands are regarded as that person's normal place of abode for the time being, except absence abroad for a consecutive 6 months consecutive during or less an inter alia purpose, and meaning unless it's saved because you're away for medical reasons or health or vacation or business during such period shall count as reside in the islands, meaning that will not be used against you. Or absences abroad for more than 6 consecutive months, but less than 1 year, shall raise the presumption that there has been a break in residence. Now, in that particular case, if you can't justify that you were on education for health, vacation, or business, but Cayman remain your place of domicile, meaning your place of residence, your legal and ordinary residence can be challenged. But the takeaway for this purpose is that it means that could be employed by a person who is a PR holder, spouse of a PR. It says nothing about Caymanians.
But it also doesn't exclude a work permit holder.
There we go.
It also doesn't exclude a work permit holder.
There we go. Because they are made legal and ordinarily resident with the approval of a work permit.
And I'm going to keep saying it until we don't have foxes. Or fox. Fox is not a word. Watching the hen houses. We are going to continue to find anomalies, absurdities, and in the law, and inconsistencies. And we're going to wonder, well, who would have come up with something so absurd that you would have thought that there would have been more protective measures for Caymanians in place? And I am going to say that. And if it offends anybody, well, bite me. But the laws of any country are for the protection of the citizens, and nobody is generally offended by that. In other jurisdictions, I only see that happening in Cayman, but if not for the protection of us right now, as we know, I think an article dated about 2 years ago said that we were basically a minority.
Oh, we are. The stats.
Laws are created. Laws are created for everyone, but generally for the protection of the minorities.
Can you wrap it up for me, my love? Because I got somebody else that's calling in on WhatsApp. But thank you so much.
I will leave you there. All right.
Always appreciate your input. Thank you so much. That caller can call back. And I know this is right up their alley. But yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that you all understood what I was saying. And good evening, caller. It's been a while. Welcome back.
Well, it's been a while. Well, I've been watching you and stalking you to make sure that I don't miss
Oh,
anything
God.
you say.
This call could be recorded for quality assurance purposes. It could be used against you at a later date.
And other purposes which we might not mention, you know. So, I mean, it would have been nice if we could have connected with the other lady, of course. But
yeah,
of course,
because you're calling WhatsApp. I can't. Yeah, I can't merge.
You can't do that. But,
I didn't want to dismiss her. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have loved to write legislation with you and the other lady once she got into for the avoidance of doubt and all that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I dealt with this law, sir, for 20-something years, from 1993 until even when I was in office. Because
you were, you practiced in immigration matters before. So, you see, a couple of things. One, it's very interesting what you brought up. To be frank with you, I never thought about that little bit of the qualifications of people who are members of the board. And a friend of mine called me just after you said that, and I said, "Well, are you listening to Sabrina?" I said, "Yes, I am. Did you hear what she said?" So we started talking about that. So we went back to the law and found that actually what you were saying was correct, because it is saying that
I know.
exactly. Those three boards. It says 12 people who are ordinary residents in the islands. It doesn't say whether you are a Caymanian generation or otherwise. And I never thought of that. And those are the things that need to be zeroed in so that people can understand why some of the problems exist of enforcement which exist at the moment. Now, the other thing, of course, is, again, there's no obligation to employ a Caymanian. So, I mean, it's like it's wrong at both ends, isn't it?
Exactly. My point, caller.
Precisely, it is wrong at both points, and I think it's somewhat similar to what the lady was saying, getting the fox to guard the hen house. Not the best analogy, but it's like you are trying to say, but it captures the idea. The idea is that you are having people who have got a lot of power. They are supposed to be looking after for Caymanians, but they themselves are not Caymanian. And then on the other side, there's no obligation for them to employ Caymanians. No. These things have to be dealt with, I think, together with the immigration reform, which is taking so long. I was listening to Kenneth Bryan today on another show when he was saying that Parliament is going to meet on the 15th of October, I think. And it is starting to look like immigration reform is not going to be done this year.
No, because
anyway,
the public consultation they didn't meet the 28-day public consultation. This is the most, there's a reason why, caller, Sabrina is breaking this down, because whatever reforms come, you will know where we're coming from. Like I said, caller, you have to know where you're coming from to understand where we're going and should there be any implications. That is why public consultation, forums like this, let's break it down in layman's terms. I'm happy that I used the analogy with the bookkeeper, just to give you the true cost of what status could cost.
Yeah. And you see, I don't know. To me, I'm filled with a lot of trepidation to begin with. The mere fact that, well, let me give some credit to the PPM as far as I know they are part of the cause of this whole immigration problem, but let me give them credit this time for saying, hey, look, government is not coming out with a clear message. That's one. They seem to be divided. And that my problem is that this division appeared, and I know you were in the last government. I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, baby, you can go right ahead. My input was never valued, sir, but go right ahead.
Well, I know why you left, and I saw all those press conferences and why you guys left. So, but anyway, I'm not going to mention you directly because in any case, I don't think this point really involves you directly, as far as I'm aware. But basically, there were two camps in that government. There was the Wayne Panton camp, which seemed to take what they are calling a practical approach, not one which is not extreme. And I remember Kenneth Bryan saying that he wanted the portfolio of immigration, but Wayne said, no, you are going to be too extreme. So that was one camp. The other camp was the Chris Sanders, Kenneth Bryan camp, which was like more firm. In this new government, that seems to be replicated as well, because Andre, the Honorable Premier, seems to be more like, let's take a more practical approach. But then you've got the other side, which is Michael Miles, which is let us do something really, really like drastic. But at the end of the day, my fear is that they are not addressing the issue. The issues they should address are issues which have been raised, for example, that you want to give status to people, okay, fine. You have to ensure you don't give more status than the natural birth rate. A lot of the people, I think that the one who has made that point, who first made that point, in my view, is Dan Warren Jr. when he ran in 2017. That's when he made the point. And I've got no problem quoting him because he has gone public about this. And nobody has been listening to that. And then the issue also has been mentioned.
I can understand why.
Yeah.
Poor Denny. Poor Denny. I love Denny to death, but you really need to, he needs to be in a classroom or something. He really needs his own show.
He needs to be a professor. He can be anything what he wants to do. You see, and to me, that's what is going to answer the problem. All these issues they are talking about, 22 years, you need 22 years in order for you to get status. You think that somebody who comes from Jamaica, from Clarendon, and I don't need to put down people who come from Clarendon. He comes from Clarendon, hardworking person, comes to Cayman and starts to find a life. You think it makes a difference whether they get status as 15 years or 22 years? No, they'll stay as long as they need to because they are working anyway. So that is not going to make a distinction. All these issues about marriages of convenience, okay, those ones they might manage maybe to prevent about 10 statuses per year, okay, and all these other little things that they are trying to do will achieve something. But at the end of the day, unless you have a target, because okay, what are the people complaining about in Cayman today? We have become a minority in our own country and we continue dwindling. So that's the issue you have to address. And how to address it is what Dan Warren Jr. has said. Have a target which ensures that is not going to happen. And in my view, even if somebody were to challenge that and go all the way to the Privy Council, I think that legally it can be justified on the basis of proportionality. It can be justified on the basis of the right to self-determination of the local people and preservation of culture. You can cite a whole range of international human rights instruments which would protect that. But it seems to me the problem is that the government just doesn't want to do that. Another thing, the one where I almost forgot, the one about retrospection, they say, no, you can't apply the new law to the people who are already in Cayman because it will be retrospective. That's nonsense. Legally speaking, there is no legitimate expectation that a law will never change. Even if you apply for status today and your application is pending, if the law changes, they can ask you to resubmit that application. So long as the law is very clear that it applies to everything, including applications which are pending. Okay, so the impediment there is not legal. Don't let anybody cheat you legally. There are a lot of Cayman Privy Council cases which have specified that. But let me give you an example. There's a case called Mappin, MAPPIN versus the Attorney General. It came out of Dominica. It went to the Privy Council. And that was the time, you remember, when there were the cable and wireless had a monopoly for 25 years. And then the governments decided to change the law so that the monopoly is eliminated. And the cable and wireless said, no, you can't do this because now you are making it retrospective. You are violating a contract. Then they went to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council said, you know what? If your monopoly was given by law, the law can change. There is no legitimate expectation that the law will never change. If you've got a problem with the contract side of it and so on, fine, you can deal with it, but you can never deny the government the right to govern and to change a law. It's the same thing. So today, if you were to say this new requirement about 12 years for PR or whatever, and if you say it will apply to everybody, including people who've been here for 10 years, so long as you make it clear in the law, it will apply and it will be valid. So if government wants to do it, they can do it. Another thing they can do if they don't want to be draconian, they can say, well, look, if you've been here 7 years, we will allow you to apply under the old law. But if you've been here for less than 7 years, then you have to apply under the new law, so you have to be here longer. They could try to soften it up that way.
And a phase,
but
yeah.
you see, all phase. Last point. The lady there talked about how the drafters, the ones who write the laws, and and you were so right to say that they are told what to do. But I think it's important to understand some of the nuance of that. Even if you are a drafter who is drafting a law, you've got a lot of scope to influence the thinking of government. A lot of times I used to write laws, they come in with a very broad policy. And then I started having a discussion with them similar to what I'm having with you. Then they see certain perspectives. And then they say, oh, can we do this? I say, yeah, you can do this. So there is a lot of scope for a drafter to influence policy as well. The problem in Cayman is the people who used to write legislation, there was one Trinidadian drafter and another British guy. And there was no Caymanian sitting with them in that little room to do the technical work. And I remember raising this issue with a certain minister. I said, do you people see that this is funny? You are writing laws on immigration, and you've got a Trinidadian there. I'm not saying that he's malicious or the British guy, but where is the Caymanian voice? You need to have a Caymanian voice. And those things, that also goes into the broad issue. There's no policy in government to try and ensure that Caymanians are writing legislation for Cayman. But Sabrina, once I get on this and so on, maybe I also need another show. Me and Danny maybe need our own shows. Well, thanks very much for the opportunity. I continue listening.
Sir, I'm going to be honest with you. You don't understand, with you confirming and whoever called you, that proves I know what I'm talking about. Because many people may say, she's just there talking. She's just there because she's didn't get elected, or she's coming after the minister. No, I'm not. I'm speaking facts. No. So, sir, I want to thank you and the person that called you. I want to thank you for endorsing that what I'm sharing here, understanding your qualifications, that I'm not blowing smoke, that I'm not just firing at the hips. I am speaking law. And I'm trying to break it down as simple as I can in layman's terms, hoping that when people hear people speak foolishness, they politely correct them and say, look, deal with the law. Hush talking foolishness. Because right now, until you deal with the law, any person can come in here on a private plane right now and apply for some of these things, and you can't demand them to do jack.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I also felt obligated that really once you've said that, I should also call in, and so that people know that you are not alone, and you and the other lady, we all agree on this.
Yes, and I appreciate all of you.
It's really very clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you take care now.
Thank you. All the best. Take care. So there you have it. Siobhan, I wish I could have merged it, but that's what happens when someone calls in via WhatsApp and another person calls in a straight line. I can't. I think it's very important for me to also break it down. When persons say, well, what is the purpose of the board? Matters for the boards to consider, and as it pertains. And the reason why I'm going here is because you would say, well, why couldn't we take away status from those persons? Why can't we just do it because they put a gate on this thing and da-da-da-da-da? I have to use these scenarios that became very national, very topical, so that it can put things into perspective. There was a march. There was a protest. This needs to stop. We need to take away their status. We need to do this. Okay. Matters for the board's consideration. In the course of processing an application for the right to be Caymanian, this is for someone who's applying for Caymanian status, the board shall satisfy that such grant would be in the public's interest, meaning that, this person, it's good, they've been here, they qualify, yada, 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 that they have adequate consideration has been given to the number of dependents who would be entitled to reside in the islands or become Caymanian by entitlement should the application be granted. Stick a pin. If you were granted permanent residence, and let's say you're the holder, the spouse, and 3 dependents, 5. Even though I am the holder of the PR and my 4 dependents, including my husband and my 3 children, were included on permanent residence, the board has a right to consider that it's not only me one they're granting the status to, even though at that time it is, But who else will benefit from this one single grant? Because I still have 4 dependents that would now be entitled by me being granted Caymanian status. Again, the board has to take that into consideration. That it would be in the best interest of the islands to grant such application if the number of dependents becoming Caymanian by entitlement would be more than 3. Didn't I not just tell on it? Me, my husband, and my 3 children? 4. Stick a pin. The applicant has not committed an act of insolvency or bankruptcy, or have been involved as a shareholder or a director of any company or other entity which has been the subject of liquidation, especially where creditors have been adversely affected. Remember now, this is things for the board to consider when they're granting Caymanian status. That the applicant is of good character and conduct, which is where the 3 character references come into play. And many a times you have to prove for this case that you're Caymanian. Now, tell me why. If I know Siobhan can't stand my guts, if I know before I got permanent residence that when I worked as her HR manager, I made her life as a Caymanian a living hell, why would I ask Siobhan for a reference? You only ask people that are going to give you good references, right? Has, to that person's credit, 3 good character reference received by the board directly from 3 Caymanians. It does not say indigenous. It doesn't say generational. And has a clean police record, hence you have to apply for a police record, and has not been involved with illegal drugs. Well, that's a different topic. The applicant is of good health and does not suffer from any form of communicable or mental disease that would make that person a danger to the community. That the applicant has not been involved in organizing or engaging in any subversive political activity, nor has the applicant organized, caused, or promote racism or any illegal activity within the island or elsewhere. The continued residence of the applicant and that person's family will contribute to the well-being of the islands. The economic situation of the islands and the protection of persons already engaged in similar gainful occupations have been duly considered, meaning they take that into consideration as well. All factors are taken into consideration. Adequate consideration has been given to the desirability of granting the right to be Caymanian to applicants with different backgrounds and from different geographical areas. Again, that's about balance, so that suitable balance in the social and economic life of the islands of the Cayman Islands may be maintained. And adequate consideration has been given to the desirability of retaining the economic resource of the islands in control of Caymanians. Now, that's what the board, when that Caymanian status comes before them on the grounds, let's say, of being here on permanent residence, naturalization, it's pretty much, these are all the things that they're considering. But what was important, okay? What was important is revocation of the right to be Caymanian. Caller, you go hold on for me, just let me read this through. Okay. Revocation of the right to be Caymanian. The right to be Caymanian granted by the board may be revoked where the holder has supplied false or misleading information in a material particular to the board, where the holder has ordinarily resided outside of the islands for a period of 5 years and can no longer be said to be settled in the islands, where the marriage of the holder being the spouse of a Caymanian is deemed by the board have been a marriage of convenience, where the civil partnership of the holder being a civil partner to the Caymanian is deemed by the board have been civil partnership of convenience, or where in 3 years of the grant to the spouse of a civil partner of a Caymanian of the right to be Caymanian and under any earlier law, the marriage or civil partnership of the holder. In the opinion of the board or director of work has broken down, has declined to the point, this is the marriage now, where the parties have separated as a result of a decree from a competent court or a deed of separation or no longer subsists. The holder of the right to be Caymanian entitled under this act or under any ambiguous provisions of an earlier law may lose the right where the holder has not been legal and ordinarily resident in the islands for a period of 7 years immediately before reaching the age of 18. These are general provisions for loss, okay? Shall notify the director of board forthwith of the relevant circumstances involving that person's legal and ordinarily residence in the islands, and willful failure to do so is an offense. The board may, by order, divest any person who has been granted the right to be Caymanian under Section 28 or Caymanian status under any earlier law of such right or status if the board is satisfied that a grant was obtained by means of fraud, false representation, or concealment of any material fact with respect to such order, which is the board shall by notice inform the person affected of the order of a person's right to appeal to the Immigration Appeals Tribunal as provided in this act. If the person is aggrieved or affected by the order, the person may be subject to Section 21. Again, this is the right of appeal because you're dissatisfied with them revoking your status. And in the event that there's being no appeal, or if an appeal is not allowed, the board shall notify the director of work of order and shall cause the notice of the order to be gazetted. Now, any person having possessed the right to be Caymanian ceases to this subsection 1 to 3 and is deemed to possess the right shall be for the purpose of this act treated as if the person had never acquired. Once it's taken away, they're treated as though they have never acquired or ever have had it or enjoyed the right to be Caymanian, and the provision of the act shall apply and have effect accordingly. But what happened to those with naturalization and the holder of a Caymanian passport? Guys, that's a total different show. Now, in regards to one receiving a conviction, which is Section 34, where the grantee of the right to be Caymanian or a Caymanian status under this or any earlier law is convicted by any court in the Cayman Islands or elsewhere, that's anywhere else in the world, have been convicted of an offense for which the grantee is sentenced to an immediate term of imprisonment of 12 months or more, other than for non-payment of a fine, and in respect of which conviction that person's right of appeal has been exhausted, which means they still have a right of appeal. They have the right to remain, reside, and make a living while this process is going through, or which, in the opinion of the grantor, was made possible by, facilitated by, or connected with the grant. The grantor may revoke, which in this case is the board, the grant. They may revoke the grant on that person's own motion. Where the court referred to is a foreign court, the offense committed must be an offense that would be recognized as an offense in the Cayman Islands. And under this section, a person of status under Section 35 of the Immigration Transition Act 2022, in respect of any rights granted under particular Part 6, the holder may relinquish, which means they can surrender. They can say, I no longer wish to be the holder of Caymanian status under Section 35 of this law. They may relinquish such rights of that person's own free will by advising the board or the director of work in writing. And upon that relinquishment, that person shall cease to enjoy any of the rights associated with that grant. Caller, what's on your mind?
I started to call back, but Mr. Balika, really, got my toes tingling. It's good to know. It's good to know, Sabrina, when you know you're firing on all cylinders.
Exactly.
And someone who has the capacity to confirm what you said, or confirm what you said is correct. But I want to give the government a little bit of free advice. I think Mr. Belika gave him a little bit earlier. Yeah, do you recall the time when you said Denny was light years ahead of his time?
I said it a number of times here. And I used the thing of Bojangles. Cayman wasn't ready for Bojangles. Cayman's wasn't ready for Taco Bell. But I bet you if you bring it now, we will embrace it. Look at Tuna Rumors. That didn't last.
I recall Denny's conversation about the granting of Caymanian status will outpace the birth rate of Caymanians. I'm not even sure I was old enough to even truly. I don't even think I had children. I wasn't even old enough to truly put it all together, mash it all together, and make sense of it. But I knew within myself that we could be giving it out faster than we can make them, and it didn't make sense. So I want to give the government a little bit of free advice, right? You touched on it earlier with respect to persons. So basically, when Sabrina gets Caymanian status, and Sabrina marries John from Timbuktu, John's also going to be entitled to Sabrina's status. If they have children, so will those children. But I think that's a one dimension of it. The Honorable Ralston Anglin in Parliament said the other day, and I think it was so critical that we be able to tie this all in so that we can truly understand what a crossroads that we're at. And he said something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing, so forgive me if I don't get it perfect. But he said something along the lines of that when we're considering immigration and, I guess, persons going on the Caymanian status, that we must consider the overall impact that it is going to have. And in his statement, if I understood it correctly, he was basically tying it back to education and saying, when Sabrina marries John, John comes with 3 children. Sabrina adopts those children. They become Sabrina's children. Those children then are then also entitled to participate in our public education
There
system
you go.
that we know is already overburdened. Overburdened. We're beyond capacity. Right? That's one aspect of this whole immigration debacle. Right? That's all that we already know is not clear. Go a step further in the education on the immigration, mash it all together, right? Those children also become entitled to compete with, let me say it, generational Caymanian. Those children also become entitled to compete with your children who are Caymanian, my children who are Caymanian for scholarships as well. They also get to compete for jobs, just like yours and mine. This is not a one-sided thing, and it needs to be so well thought out. Let me go a step further. Those Sabrina and John who actually got status, there is nothing in legislation that says Sabrina and John ought to be able to financially take care of themselves and not be a burden to the state. I think that is critical.
No, it's here, but it's not in such many. Yeah, go ahead. But I think it's critical when you're becoming a citizen of another country that we do not pay taxes. We don't pay taxes. If we pay taxes, slap them on then, by all means, come on and apply. But this is why annually you have to declare their interest. But I don't think the enforcement arm is looking at it, or it could be better defined for the annual payment that you do like a audit of these persons. But let me tell you something, caller. In order to get this right, we're going to need an overseeing department to make sure that we catch some of these things. Because even with the courts reporting back to cabinet, and the director of work should be reporting certain things to cabinet. And this is where data is key so that they can get a sense But who's doing that? Who is doing that?
Nobody.
I wouldn't say that, but is it?
It don't look like anybody's doing
But
it.
even the judiciary, even the judicial system as well. Because this is where you actually find people, if you have a central drop point where everyone who's reporting in can process that information and see who's in breach. Like, when was the last time an audit of every
When was the
status
last-
grant was given, all status grants, and run a report on all of those Caymanian status holders, be it naturalized or not, to see their ins and outs of the islands, to see if they're in breach of legal and ordinarily resident. But I bet you they're coming back here for medical.
I bet you they come back here get that NAU money.
You see what I'm saying? But if they don't have any developed real estate and they only come maybe 3-4 days, maybe a week at max, they don't own anything here, that's, you can't be considered deemed Caymanian if your permanent place of abode is not here. But who is enforcing that?
Nor are you ordinarily resident.
Exactly.
Which is a part of the criteria.
But how do you
However,
catch them? How do you catch them?
It the case escapes me right now, but there is a UK case that actually says you can be ordinarily resident in more than one jurisdiction. How that's going to be? You can only be in one place at one time.
Okay, fine. If you own property and let's say you're a snowbird, okay, you only come based on some medical reasons that you can't be here during the hot season, but you come here wherever you're living is really cold.
Then just be a PR holder and never move on to Caymanian status, because the granting of Cayman status comes with a tremendous obligation. Not just. Then if you do not intend to, if Cayman is not your intended home, then just be a PR holder. Sorry. I'm sorry. It is not acceptable. Status should be revered, not for sale, for God's sake.
My love.
But I will give the immigration a little bit free advice for somebody to take into consideration, right? I've been banging on about this. I think we got a little problem. You see, when right now, I think the threshold for persons with dependents is about 3,500 CI. I don't know which person is going to be able to maintain one dependent.
Per child.
3,500 CI, right? It's per dependent. I don't think you have to make a minimum of 3,500, right? All I'm saying is I think that we're setting ourselves up really bad, because we don't have legislation right now that can you pointed it out. It's a little bit shaky. It got 3 legs. But I think we're going down a very slippery slope as far as that's concerned, and we're going to wind up in a whole lot of problems. I think I brought it up just a minute ago, touching on the NAU aspect. You continue. I'm sorry, I'm being derogatory, but if you continue to import poverty into this country, our social welfare climate is going to decline to a point such that it is going to outpace us. It already has, in my opinion. It already has, in my opinion. I think that the law, and for the powers that be and whoever may be listening, I'm just putting it out there, I think that needs to change in respect of the amount that you have to earn in order to have your dependents here with you. That's one. That's one thing. Again, these persons are more than likely planning on moving on to Caymanian status. I am sorry. There is no way under this wonderful Cayman sun that you and a dependent can live on $3,500. You cannot. You cannot. It is a farce. And let's not talk about adding a child to it. That child has to go to a private school. So can we move that up a little bit? Second thing, this idea that when Sabrina moves here with her husband, Sabrina moves here, I don't care what Sabrina moves here to do, pump gas for God's sake. When Sabrina moves here on her application that she puts her husband on, she has confirmed and attested to that what she earns is enough money to take care of her husband. Sabrina's husband is in Cayman all of one day, and he is up in one of those employment agencies. I think it's unacceptable. I think it's unacceptable. I think it's an outright lie, and you have deceived the government and the people of this country because you said in your application that you earned enough money to take care of your husband. That needs to change. That is taking away employment from Caymanians. There was a lot of talk about this during the campaign trail, and it's all gone really silent.
But
that's another thing that we have to consider.
But caller, everything that you just described requires enforcers, the gatekeepers doing their job. And if even information is received,
they don't do nothing. Fine, then.
My point. But it's not that we're not short of laws. We're
It's
just
painful.
not enforcing.
It's painful
Because
we
even when I look here under the immigration regulations, periodic reports to the cabinet. The board or director of WORC shall submit a detailed report to the cabinet outlining the total number of work permits granted, extended, and revoked during a previous quarter. Information from the courts, etc. Under section 8. The director of work shall at least once every month obtain from the courts a list of all convictions, divorces, and relative particulars relating thereto, a monthly report from the police and the registrar of births in order for the director of work to ascertain whether or not any person shall be allowed to remain in the island.
And I hear you, and I absolutely hear you. There's a massive obligation on the enforcement arm of, I guess, WORC or work, whatever they want to call themselves. But there's also a lack of, as I understand, not just communication, but cooperation from the enforcement arm and pushback because Sabrina do not like what coming down the pipeline.
But I can tell you this much, my friend.
If you don't want to do your job, you need to go have a conversation with HR.
Stick a pin. I sat at the highest table of this land for 3 years and a half. I can't ever recall seeing any of these reports. Mind you, I was the Minister of Health and Home Affairs. But because it says to cabinet, periodic reports to cabinet, the board or director of WORC shall submit a detailed report to the cabinet, doesn't matter whether or not you're a minister, outlining the total number of work permits granted, extended, and revoked during the previous quarter.
I just find that we've been a democracy of reaction instead of proaction. And what I'm saying is, if the legislation says that these things need to be done, is there not anyone charged with ensuring that it's being carried out? And then
am I hearing the word accountability of the operational arm of government? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Well, yes.
They're the one who's charged with it. When I use the term gatekeepers, it is the operational arm of government that I am actually referring to. They are the ones that are charged with that. Absolutely. You could be a first-time minister of work. This should be something that is done.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, when the minister that Sabrina is the minister of has the operational arm, the enforcement arm, whatever you want to call it, under her, so to speak, and I understand they report to the board, and they're not in compliance or they're not carrying out their duties, it reflects on the minister. I'm sorry. And you can get up and shout until you are blue. I do believe it reflects on the minister.
Yes, it does. It does.
Nobody says, well, HSA is a mess because the nurses down in pediatrics did a terrible job. Nobody said that. HSA
They
is a
say
mess
Sabrina did a
because
horrible job.
failed. Because Sabrina failed.
Well,
Okay?
in that case, it would be the board.
And people who
Somebody
don't
said I need to give
understand,
you a kaboom.
who don't, well, thank you. People who don't understand the inner and outer workings of how
It's
government
not
works.
the
and
minister.
They're people who don't even understand that there's 3 pillars of government. That's a very basic construct for somebody like me. And I'm not suggesting that people are stupid by any chance, but unless you've spent enough time trying to understand how it works and who is responsible for what, you may find yourself blaming the wrong people or whatever, but
I am the
absolutely
victim
believe
caller of that, and I'm okay because as my little friend, well, his name is Cameron, came late to class yesterday, I had to go through fire in order to educate you.
Yeah, but to a degree, and I'm going to tell you, if it were me, I get nothing speaking my piece. I am going to make it clear. I'm not sitting on my mouth or sitting on my hands while you carrying my ministry to hell.
I tried.
And
I
my
tried.
hands are tied and
I tried.
They would kick
And
me.
only
They
then.
would kick me. They would kick me out because I'm
only
making public no.
then did it come down like a ton of bricks. Now, mind you, was blessed with 2 ministries, but one, I love home affairs. They worked with me. And not everybody in health was against me. But let me tell you, one day I'll write a book.
But until then, the country's in peril. Until
well,
then,
I can only educate as much as I can, which is why I take to law. And they asked about what happens when PR fees are not paid. That went into something totally different. But to make it make sense, I had to tell you how the boards are constructed, how they're revoked, things that they can consider, what the board has to consider, everything that people were protesting about. Who you think laughing at us now? Who you think right now is laughing at us because they know what the law says? Even when you're going to say, I'm embarrassed.
But again, these boards are largely political.
What is it?
I would say these boards are largely political. I would dare say 95, 98%, right? There's going to be one little exception that's going to slip in. One little exception that's going to slip in, and it's going to make you ready. Everyone will be like, well, how did that happen? Right? But at the end of the day, I just want to implore the government to understand how critical it is to get this right. Like, we are no longer at this is the crossroads. Like, we are here. It is upon us. It is breathing down our necks. And I'm quite frankly quite nervous because when you know, as you grow up and you hear maybe your parents or your grandparents reciting what they believe to be legislation, and you go on that complete assumption instead of educating yourself or going out of your way to actually confirming or verifying what it is. I'll give you an example. Common law marriage. It don't exist in this country. It do not. Right? But immigration is a mess. It is a mess. It is a mess. It is a mess to the highest
Get the
order.
right people around the table, put your egos aside, engage with the public, and it's easy. It's not hard. But when we take politics, no, what I'm saying is you can get there because no man is an island.
If you want to get there, and I genuinely believe that there's a lack of will, why it hasn't been done for so long. And guess what? You will never get a piece of legislation that's going to please everybody.
True.
You will never get a piece of legislation that is absent of flaws. We got to get progress, not perfection. We've got to get progress, not perfetion.
Well, you hear me say here all the time, putting your head in the sand isn't going to solve the problem. Silent isn't a solution.
But this is it. My Marvel boyfriend called in the other day about the crisis. The crisis with Venezuela and Trinidad, right? I actually visited the HSA today. Sorry to digress. I visited the HSA today, and I'm not gonna talk about that, but it went up with a poor state. I was shocked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, I went in, I came out, I got through like lickety split because I was shocked. But just think about what he said. And we're thinking about a humanitarian crisis in this case, right? Initially, it starts out as a humanitarian crisis. Then it will jump into a immigration crisis. Then it'll keep ramping up because guess what?
Mm-hmm.
They need food, they need money, they need place to stay, they need work, they need all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think our hospital, right? I don't even think the hospital has a capacity currently. So I don't believe all of them combined have the capacity. Should we have a national emergency? So answer the cry.
I can answer that, but I can't give you direct numbers. It was a statement that I made on the floor of Parliament, which is actually in the Hansard. At that time, we had, based on international standards, combining all healthcare facilities, and that included Cayman Health Cities, both locations, including Cayman Bay and Doctors Hospital, of course, Georgetown Hospital. We had more beds per capita.
We had more beds.
When you combine all of them at that time. Now, based on current stats, I actually made a statement on the floor of Parliament in regards to that, where bed capacity was concerned. And that included the sister islands.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think statistically speaking, we are bringing in somewhere near to 22 persons into this country to live and work per day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was last year.
That even include Jasmine too. That had include Jasmine because we would expect that all the persons in the industry would come together, like the description you give, and we would all be one. But
again, that's just another, I guess, faucet to consider that, are we really prepared for any of what we're doing? How far have we thought and considered? And money is nice and good, right? But if COVID taught me anything, you can have all the money in the world. There was nothing you could do if COVID got you.
Mm-hmm.
But you had it. Do you understand? And I mean, again, laws didn't stop you from getting it. Lack of enforcement or enforcement didn't stop you from getting it. I just think that we just need to...
Well, we're in overtime, my love, so I'm going to ask you to wrap it up for me.
Yeah, pump the brakes. Pump the brakes for a little bit. Because, well, actually, get off the brakes. We've been on emergency brakes for too long. And get something done. Something sensible, something... And measure twice, cut once. I'm scratching my head. I will leave you there.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping that there's a lot of takeaways here for you today. And I hope that I opened up your eyes and that you realize I'm not coming after anybody. I'm here to educate. Thank you so much, caller, again. And it has been, I hope that you're enjoying the content being shared here today. And I hope that you're realizing that right now the Cayman Islands are at a crossroads, as the caller so alluded. And we continue to overlook unpaid promises, as this show was entitled, or we can demand accountability from everybody. We can also choose silence, or we can choose reform with dignity, fair, balance, and use data. Immigration is just not about who gets to stay here, or even who contributes, because then you're buying your way through a system. And if we want a just Cayman, we must demand just enforcement. Upskill them, tool them, fund them adequately, and hold them accountable for delivery. And if we want to build a future that's fair, sustainable, and transparent, we must start by asking the hard questions. You challenged me here today. You challenged me yesterday. I've delivered. I could have multiple shows on just that one law so I can break it down for you. Even status on the grounds of entitlement, status on the grounds of different elements of PR and what it means. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem. But what I'm saying, it's a lot to digest. Where the PR fees and the takeaway is concerned, we need to come to make a decision. Are we going to be protecting Cayman's reputation or risking it by not doing their jobs? Are we empowering the boards and councils or leaving them to rubberless? Are we treating people with dignity and grace or with indifference? These are some of the things, because our policymakers and the gatekeepers of our legislation, they are the operational arm of government that is tasked with exactly what I just said. So let's stop speaking and firing at the hips and just read the law before you go, ooh. And I really hope this reform that is proposed will be a catalyst of change, and that will actually give the protection and sense of security that our Caymanians were so hungry for, because we owe it to ourselves. But we cannot throw out, like what my friend said, the baby with the bathwater. Thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. Thank you for everyone who called. And thank you for speaking up. Until tomorrow, enjoy the rest of your evening. It has been my pleasure. That's a wrap for this edition of Sabrina Speaks.
That's a wrap for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks. Thank you for tuning in and for being part of the conversation. Remember, the dialogue doesn't stop here. Stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, stay empowered. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m., same time, same place, right here on CMR TV and radio, where your voice matters and your truth is heard. Until then, Cayman, take care of yourself and each other.
That's it for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks, where your voice matters, your story counts, and your truth is always welcome. Join us weekdays from 5 until 6:30 p.m. right here on CMR TV as we dive into the topics that matter most to you. Catch the show live or on demand at cmrtv.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram so you never miss a moment. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and always speak your truth.